Hello guys and gals, me Mutahar, and regardless of what the title says, where I may think it's morally ethical, morally okay to pirate certain games, especially from Nintendo, I will have to say for the record, full disclaimers, piracy is illegal. You shouldn't partake in it, and if you don't own something, you shouldn't download it. Like many of the commercials we saw growing up, you wouldn't download a handbag, you wouldn't download a car, you wouldn't download an entire government now, would you, ladies and gentlemen? Now the story is actually interesting. Now this individual by the name of Matthew Storman, this mad lad himself, used to run a website known as RomUniverse. RomUniverse was one of the most famous ROM hunting websites. Basically, you go to this website, you could download whatever you wanted. Now, Nintendo basically sent a lawsuit towards this individual. Now, this isn't really shocking to a lot of people. ROM sites in the past have been shut down by Nintendo pretty much. Nintendo basically hires John Wick effectively to find these sites, and if one of them gained the attention, then you're basically on the out. So anyways, Nintendo sued this individual, but in this case, I have to kind of defend Nintendo, because apparently it seems as though good old Storman was such a mad lad that Storman actually decided, I shit you not, to charge premium fees. So in this document right here, lists copies of ROM files of Nintendo's copyrighted video games for download. So moreover, plaintiff, which in this case is Nintendo, filed a copy of a promotional advertisement from the defendant's website, which in this case is Storman, or ROM, the website that he's running, for a purchase of a premium unlimited account for his website for access to thousands of game ROMs, movies, ISOs, and ebooks, for which included the Nintendo Switch, a currently active game system, the Wii, the 3DS/DS, so if you wanted to play Nanashi no game, this might be your site, Game Boy Advance, and more unlimited downloads for only $30. So you can imagine that running a ROM site is already like walking through a fucking minefield. To be charging money for premium downloads is an even bigger minefield. Now in this entire situation, I think the guy ended up making like $30,000. Hey, wait a minute, it might actually be in this entire court docket. Yeah, his defendant testified at his deposition that his income for 2019 was approximately $30,000 to $36,000. His RomUniverse website was the main source of the income. So to understand, ladies and gentlemen, they even said here his monthly income from the website was apparently $800 a month before he shut it off. His only source of income was from his deposition was unemployment and food stamps. So basically, I've talked to a few actual like ROM hosting website people who have been in the game, and from what I've understood, this is actually a pretty okay figure. See, to understand, when you have people downloading from your service in terms of potential megabytes to gigabytes, because ROM files get larger depending on what you're emulating. Something on the NES would be in the kilobytes. Something on the PlayStation 2 would be in the gigabytes. And of course, when you're going into Xbox 360, PlayStation 3 territory, which are now the new emulators on the block, then you end up getting into the multiple tens of gigabytes potentially. So apparently, according to all these bandwidth fees, basically you're about to make enough on the website to break even. And if that's your best option. In most cases, operating a website like this usually costs you money every month. So I guess it's mostly a fucking thankless affair. Now you can imagine this individual charging you $30 a month for premium access, which if you used any recent ROM website at all, you'll notice that they have terrible download speeds. Most of them are downloading at 200 kilobytes, 300 kilobytes a second. And the reality of it is they have to throttle you, because if you can buy a special subscription or potentially use a malware-ridden launcher or a download, program that they send, then you'll gain access to even better download speeds at the cost of losing your personal security and your safety and whatever files you have on your system, okay? Don't ever always, if you're ever going to go down here, never download any game ROM that's packaged in an exe file. That is a very dangerous landmine to be stepping on. But anyways, let's whittle on back real quick. So this guy got fucking sued, and initially Nintendo wanted $15 million, but I guess it got whittled on down to like somewhere around the $2.1 million range. They actually worked a pretty good deal that was actually brought forward by apparently this guy, according to this document. So let's read this one real quick. Through its June 9th motion and by subsequent email on June 22nd, Nintendo advised defendant that he is violating the court's May 3rd, 2021 order by failing to make his required required sanctions payment of $50 a month. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, $50 a month is basically the slap on the wrist this guy got. So while he did end up getting that fine, it was supposed to be paid in $50 a month increments. So this is the closest you are ever going to get to dodging a fucking bullet. But here's what this mad lad decided to do. The opposition does not dispute the defendant is considering, in this case, the Stormin, is relaunching the RomUniverse website to continue to distribute video game ROMs. Defendant's threat to continue to operate RomUniverse to distribute video game ROMs using the same website he used for the past several years to mass infringe Nintendo's copyright and trademark rights necessitates the entry of an injunction. Yeah, this guy getting sued wasn't bad enough. Hey, if I got sued for that amount of money and they said I only had to pay $50 a month, I would pucker my butthole and give up $50 a month. End of story. Especially if it's going up against a legal team like Nintendo's, all right? Those Nintendo ninjas do not fuck around. If you're paying $50 a month, good for you. Listen, his butthole is about to be goat seed, okay? Right now, the fingers are in. If he doesn't make the $50 payment, it's getting stretched, if you understand. Now, could you imagine, ladies and gentlemen, in the story, do you think this guy kept paying $50 a month? Yes or no? Look at the time bar for the video below. Of course he didn't. No. So recently, this is a new court, district court-like update, okay? A permanent injunction against the defendant, Matthew Stormin. So it's hereby ordered, and this is fucking insane. Listen to how far Nintendo has went. From engaging in directly, so pursuant to 15 USC, so this guy is permanently, restrained from engaging in directly or indirectly or authorizing or assisting any third party to engage in any of the following activities in the United States of America and throughout the world. So you can't even just go out of the country. Copying, distributing, selling, performing, displaying, playing, or otherwise using any unauthorized copy of a Nintendo copyrighted work or any derivative thereof. So basically, if this guy wanted to emulate Super Mario Brothers on the NES, this permanent injunction prevents him. Now, of course, the logic of like how many federal agents do you think are going to go to this guy's house on a regular basis and be like, all right, Matthew, are you emulating games? Have you been emulating that Legend of Zelda there, bud? Can we check your computer? Yeah, I don't know if that's going to work the way, but that's pretty serious. Now, B, using or inducing or enabling others to use any reproduction, counterfeit, copy, or colorable imitation of Nintendo's trademark in any manner in connection with the manufacture, printing, distribution, advertising, offering for sale, or sale of any goods or service, including the use of Nintendo's trademark in connection with a website. C, using any trademark, service mark, name, logo, design, or source designation of any kind that has any connection with the goods or services. And then, here's the kicker. Beyond all of that, this is already bad enough. The court ordered further, defendant shall permanently destroy all unauthorized Nintendo games or other unauthorized copies of Nintendo's intellectual property, including movies, books, and music, no later than August 17, 2021, a couple days ago. And tomorrow, by the time this video is uploaded, defendant shall file a declaration under penalty of perjury with the court certifying his compliance no later than August 20th, 2021. It is so ordered. Nintendo not only yanked the balls, but they ripped that testicle straight off and threw it right into the fucking center of the Andromeda galaxy. That's how hard this dude got fisted. I mentioned Goatsy earlier. This is like one man 15 jars territory, okay? Picture that one in your head, all that shattered glass. It is not pretty. So yeah, ladies and gentlemen, this is, I think this entire court case is basically the definition of play stupid games, win stupid prizes. Look, I hate to be defending Nintendo taking down a fucking ROM site, but there is no one with any shadow of a doubt that can look at this image and tell me that this guy wasn't playing with fire. I mean, you're already talking about the best ROM site in the universe. Very, very hard tale to have. 60,000 ROMs, free downloads, and all of the copyright touchy artwork in the world. Yeah, RomUniverse basically got shifted, and Matthew got shifted alongside with it. Now, to understand, something that's wild about this entire situation is the only reason Nintendo really jumped the gun on this is because this guy was willing to profiteer off of these ROMs, right? Now, in this case, I find Nintendo's work to be a little bit hypocritical, and I'll explain why. So to understand, ladies and gentlemen, before we go even further, to understand, game preservation actually gets a little bit of a bonus. This is the Internet Archive, so basically the guys who run the Wayback Machine actually got a DMCA exception to help archive vintage software, basically old games on the NES, right? But basically, it's vital to make proper archival copies of these artifacts, because the life of magnetic media such as floppy disks has been estimated to 10 to 30 years. Time is running out to properly archive much of this large body of work for safekeeping. Now, of course, you can download NES ROM packs in torrent form from these individuals. Again, though, the legalities of you downloading it is entirely different. But these people have DMCA exceptions. That does exist. Nintendo, as far as I know, is not able to necessarily take this down. Now, what makes this super hypocritical and weird to me is if you just go on Amazon for 5 seconds, you can basically find plenty of devices. Like, here's something called the Anbernic game console that proudly, for $200 by the way, just states, over built-in 2,400 retro game console, okay? So they have 2,400 retro games, and I shit you not, in the Amazon listing alone, these people are straight up telling you it includes Super Mario, okay? So they're already selling you what is one of the most widely available, widely litigated ROMs right now on Amazon. So if Nintendo really cared about stopping people, they would actually target stuff like this. Now, again, like I said in the beginning, I think it's morally okay to pirate Nintendo games. I think it's morally okay to pirate a lot of these games that have been out of circulation for over 20 years. Now, earlier we looked at the idea of preserving games, and the reality of it is that I believe that emulation and ROMs are the best way of preserving any form of medium right now. For instance, here's Assassin's Creed The Americas Collection, right? Actually, a better explanation might be... Actually, no, this is a good enough explanation. Assassin's Creed 3 is a game that has a multiplayer component. A component that actually has story implications and things that you can unlock in your own time. Unfortunately, in a recent remastered version, you can't really get that multiplayer bonus. To better illustrate my point, if you look over here in Steam, you can see that Assassin's Creed 3 Remastered, which doesn't even have the multiplayer whatsoever, actually is the only thing on the Steam storefront. So actually, if you look at it, this is just the remaster of the game, with mixed reviews and all. So if you actually go, if you own the game, if you happen to have actually owned it in some capacity on Steam, like I do, you're not able to purchase the original any longer. So apparently it has been delisted. If I go to the actual store page for it, you can't buy this game anymore. So even in some cases, if you wanted the original experience, it's slowly being phased out in the digital world. So unless you own this game on disc, whether it be on the PlayStation 3 or Xbox 360, or you have an older license for a PC game, this might be the only way to experience the game in its original glory, alongside any features that may have been cut out in future releases. See, as games like this get remade and remastered for newer generations, parts of the game are actually cut out and removed. So by having this disc, I can put it into a Blu-ray drive, back it up, and using something like RPCS3, I can then emulate it on PC and enjoy it as if it would on its release. Okay, so there's a definite benefit to game preservation. I also play games like Grand Theft Auto Vice City on a PS2 emulator instead of a PC. The PC port for Vice City is already kind of broken without modification. I download the PS2 version because it's out of the box, it works underneath PCSX2 as an emulator, and I can actually listen to the original soundtrack that has all been removed. Same could be said for Grand Theft Auto 4, and to be honest with you, I can go down the laundry list. People ask me why I emulate games on the PC that I could just run PC versions of. And the reality of it is, sometimes when a game is remastered, remade, sometimes it can even be updated out of my control and have things removed. With emulation, you always have a 1.0 version of a game that you can always run underneath a program and get the original untouched experience of, the way that in some ways developers expected you to experience a game. Even when it comes to Nintendo games, there are a lot of titles right now from Nintendo. For instance, the Super Mario 3D All-Stars collection, which might as well have just been called a ROM pack that you buy for $60. There is nothing in that collection that you couldn't have just downloaded a ROM of and experienced better underneath ROM software that has existed for over a decade. That's something that I wanted to look at. When I talk about the moral, ethical, values of piracy, I look at games where developers are not profiteering off anymore. And even beyond profiteering, there's a case to be made that these older versions of games that aren't in circulation anymore also aren't providing any form of revenue to any of these developers or publishers. Something like Metal Gear Solid 2, for instance, has remasters and remakes. Sorry, not remakes, remasters. There's a distinction between the two. And while yes, you can get Metal Gear Solid 2 on an HD collection and play the game in 60 frames all the way through with higher resolution, there are game modes that have actually been removed. What you're seeing on the screen is something called snakeboarding, an actual game mode that was available on the Subsistence re-release of Metal Gear Solid 2. Only playable on the PS2, as far as I know. Even the original Xbox release doesn't have this, and the PC release doesn't even have this at all. So again, a lot of these games sometimes have features that are added and removed. And for a game preservationist standpoint, if you go back to the ROM website that we were looking at in question, they had ROMs for something called the RCA Studio 2, a very old, obscure console. There's even an emulator that I found out that is available on Windows 3.11. So even the most obscure system has ROMs and emulators to preserve. And the important part about that is, listen, gaming is something that generations come into. 40 years from now, newer gamers are going to jump in, and like movies and music where we have the original untouched pieces intact for anybody to go back to, we need to do the same thing with video games, because RCA Studio 2s, Magnavox Odysseys, Game Boys, Super Nintendos, PlayStation 1s, they're all going to wither away as time goes on, unless of course you preserve the software and the hardware in emulation form, which is about the best many people can do. And that's something that I hold very near and dear to me. So again, to tie preservationism back to all of it, let's just go look at Nintendo even closer as a sole pusher of a lot of these legal actions towards ROM websites, and why I think that's not exactly right. Now, there's also another big reason that I have a problem with too. A lot of these gaming companies like Nintendo are not providing solid alternatives. For instance, Nintendo still has an entire vault of games that are untouchable, okay? Games like Earthbound, for instance, one of the best RPGs that have ever been created by gaming companies, exists only in the hands of emulation at this point. Sure, you can get yourself an SNES Classic, and that might be the one way for you to get Earthbound. But if that goes out of circulation, then the only logical way of getting Earthbound right now, from what I understand, is through ROMs that you're downloading on the internet. Because even services like Nintendo Switch Online that allow you to play ROMs every month, provided you have a license for the service, will only get you the games that Nintendo wants. It's not an entire library that you can buy like the old Virtual Console days. In fact, if anything, the old Virtual Console is basically dead. The Nintendo Switch doesn't have it. You can basically play whatever Nintendo wants you to play for whatever you pay each month, which I think is a bad way of handling business, all right? If Nintendo allowed you to buy each of these ROMs for I think, a healthy price of maybe $5, like if you wanted to buy Earthbound for $4.99 and play it on your Switch, I think that's a fair price. If Nintendo wanted you to buy Link to the Past for $5, I think that's a fair price. I think if they charged you $4.99 for Chrono Trigger, fair price. That's a lot of game for $5. For an NES game like Legend of Zelda, if they charged you $1 for it, I think that would be a fair price. Again, if they gave the option, I wouldn't even tell you guys that piracy is morally okay. But they're not providing the fucking option, which is the problem. Look, I can yell about this till I'm blue in the face, but Nintendo basically ruined this guy's life over the fact that he was basically running a ROM site and also finding a way to charge a premium service. $30, I don't know if he was charging per month, is an insane amount of cash for just ROMs. Now, that being said, though, again, it goes back down to play stupid games, win stupid fucking prizes. And that's pretty much where this guy's life is headed to. If he still challenges Nintendo, kind of a dumb move on my part. But that being said, though, I'm going to go back to playing some Assassin's Creed Unity on this device. I just wanted to show you something on the GPD Win. Bro, they got Assassin's Creed Unity. And I got this running at 30 frames per second. I'm excited for whatever the Steam Deck comes into. I'm getting back into gaming. I'm having a good old vibe tonight, ladies and gentlemen. If you like what you saw, please like, comment, and subscribe. Just like it if you dislike it. I am out.